Pa'lante. Ya tú sabes la manera, la gente quiere Changó, los nenes no esperan. Es el paz que nos hablamos, tune in every weekend for the beat. Este es Changó. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, dale pues, dale pues. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, mueve las caderas. Dale pues, dale pues, dale pues.
Hola y bienvenidos oyentes. My name is Chantilly McFarland.
Hey everybody, my name is Bree Mercedes.
Hey y'all, I'm Naomi Lovitt.
Y somos Radio Changó. I'm a junior journalism major and Spanish minor and the producer and co-host of Radio Changó.
I am a senior political science major with a TV and film minor and your other host of Radio Changó.
Hello everyone, I'm a freshman undecided major and economics minor and I'm also a co-host. So, what can you guys tell someone like me, a freshman de Radio Changó?
Well, para empezar, tenemos que hablar de quiénes somos. Radio Changó es una extensión de la organización Changó. Changó is the Afro-Latine Student Association and Spanish Society at Howard University, que fue creado por nuestro asesor y profesor en Howard, el Dr. Akasi.
Donde hay falta, vemos posibilidades.
Beautiful.
Last February, there was a winter showcase that I really enjoyed. I got to be the coach and coordinator for modeling.
Oh my gosh, I didn't get to go, but I remember hearing there were really talented performers.
Right? Shout out to Valencia Pizzini, one of my models. Quentin Price sang beautifully, and Selma Apara did an amazing cultural dance. We modeled clothes that were designed by Afro-Latinas and performed in ways that embodied our Latin heritage.
Okay, so Changó has a lot to be involved in, I'm hearing.
Of course we do. Somos la única organización en el campus que representa a la población afro-latina, la cultura y el idioma español. The name Changó comes from one of the orishas in Santeria. The Orisha Changó originates from the Yoruba tradition and is associated with la danza, dance, la percusión, drumming, y el liderazgo, leadership.
And I also heard that Changó has an array of events, Loteria y Damanos Night, the Multicultural Festival, and even our Doni Donia pageant. I'm so excited to go. Like, what? This is a great freshman year.
El propósito de Radio Changó is to be a platform that advocates for undiscussed common issues within the Afro-Latina, Latina, and Black communities all at once. It's a unification of us in general. We talk about shared experiences and experiences that are unique to us and hope that somebody who's listening can relate to one of us. And even if they don't, they can understand our experience a little bit better.
I can't wait to hear about that. This week, I also had the honor to interview Dr. Akasi and Kayla Cazón sobre sus aspiraciones para Radio Changó y lo que lo inspiró a crear esta organización. All right, so Dr. Akasi, why did you want to start this podcast or the organization itself? Why did you want to be a part of something like this?
Changó was existing though, but it was not called Changó. That's why I say founder. It was like a kind of Spanish club, but it was not working. It was dormant when I was recruited at the Department of World Language and Culture. Because I'm specialist also of Afro-Latino studies, I studied in Spain and Cuba and work on Afro-Latino studies. I was wondering how I can make Howard, as a historically Black institution, be the leader on conversation about African descent in Latin America, but also in the Spanish-speaking country, because we need to remind Latin America is not only referred to Spanish-speaking people, though. Latin America is referred also to French-speaking people, like Haiti, for instance, or Portuguese-speaking people, like Brazil. So the first idea was to connect the student with that roots at Howard University, these African roots. And what more important than the word Changó, that is a deity, African deity, to call the newly founded or created Afro-Latine association and Spanish-speaking society, right?
Yes, sir.
And this is important to do the distinction between Afro-Latine and Spanish-speaking, because Afro-Latine refer to this area of
Right.
Latin America, right, where you have African descent, called commonly Afro-Latine, and those who are, for instance, in Spain and in Africa, those are Spanish-speaking people too, but they all has a common denominator. This African descent is the African roots, the African history, and also what they lost as they enslaved and what they lost as they colonized, for instance, and or what they lost also as immigrants. For instance, those who are in Spain, they are immigrants, right? And this is important. Right, this is important for students at Howard University to know that that was the base to have it. Now, to come to the core of your question, why this is important, the podcast. Because this is something maybe my students did not know. I was, after my bachelor in Ivory Coast, before I got a scholarship to go to Spain for my graduate studies, I did journalism. I did journalism in newspapers, right? But I was always fascinated by TV and radio. I did not get this chance because there were not a lot of possibilities. There were only one TV channel, one radio station in Ivory Coast at that time. And then there was a second one eventually, but also there were so many people, they around there to recruit. I was almost already in the newspaper. And I was thinking, I said, I want to do something specific one day, right? Either as a professor or for my student when I finish my doctorate. So when I came at Howard, and I discovered, because I did not know from outside though, like there was a university called Howard University, that's the HBCU. So before I came, when I was doing my research, when I was living in Europe, I found out about it, and this is one of the reasons why I accept position here. And the podcast was then that idea. These conversations that we were having at the university when we were students in Ivory Coast about Pan-Africanism, about African descent. But there were a piece missing. Like, although I was student in Spanish, there were not a Latino community because, they're not there in Africa. Yeah. If they are, maybe they're professional ambassador or whatever, but we don't have a huge community like you have here, right?
Exactly.
But besides that, even for me, it was go beyond just the concept of Latino. It was when you see, my question mark was when you talk about Latine or when you talk about Hispanic, are you necessarily talking about African descent? No. So this conversation, I wanted to have that on the table. And what more than a mass media, podcast or radio are called mass media. What more than a mass media?
Exactly.
The podcast to have it. We started like a volunteer with a radio online. But it did not last long because then each students were busy. They were not as involved like you because the Chantilly's part is what you do and also what you want to do. So now we are people who are very, very involved on that. So I think this podcast will take our dream to become true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think so as well. That was a great response to that first question. I'm going to go ahead and ask you the second question as well. So what is an issue or a change in the Afro-Latine community or Latina community in general that you want us to address as a podcast? As you spoke about, your time in Africa and just traveling in general, you've gotten a chance to really get some insight into the community. So
one thing I want this podcast carry is to make sure the students carry themselves deep conversation about Latine and Afro-Latine, and at large also about Hispanic, Spanish, and Afro-Hispanic and Afro-Spanish, because they're different concepts, right?
Yeah.
So not only from the perspective of the professional, from the professor, but also from the perspective of the student. I think this is the turning point that I'm bringing at Howard. Not something carried by professors, but precisely by students. Because knowledge is not produced, for me at least. Knowledge is not produced only by professors and by professionals. It's produced also by the learners, by the students. So this knowledge needs to come from the question mark, the problem like the student can see. Because I'm there to guide, but I'm sure the students see some issues, and I want the student to feel free to address these issues. For instance, I know students talking about aesthetic and blackness, right? Aesthetic and blackness, one example is about the hair. What is the relationship between the hair and the black pride, for instance?
Yes.
Right? So what is the relationship between the healthcare and black representation of medicine, for instance? What is the link between the issues that Afro-Latine or Latina are facing and the issues like African descent in U.S. are facing? This kind of dialogue, this kind of conversation, but the turning point is carried by students at our university. And this is the one point. The second point is to make sure the student also can have this kind of conversation not only in one language, in English, but also in Spanish. You know, because we're more speaking by this large population of Afro-Latine. But if you got some people, like you come to Changó and they say they can speak Portuguese, invite them.
Yes.
And they will be part of the conversation and talk about Brazil, right? But as we can start with that, like English and Spanish, right? So at the end of the day, the long-run purpose is to make this podcast, Radio Changó, the only one ever driven by students at Howard University and in the United States in Spanish.
Yes.
The longer-run objective is that.
Right.
And the longer objective is not only that to be air in Spanish, but also to be national.
Yes.
Like everybody tune, and they say Radio Changó, and everybody in United States of America say, I'm tuning in Radio Changó from Howard University. Not only among Howard students, but among all citizens of the United States.
Right, and it helps us distinguish ourselves.
Exactly.
It's very important that people are able to make that distinction.
Exactly, and I want to add something, and I hope this will be aired because this is a message to the new president of Howard University. I want to tell him this. He knows about Latin American studies, and he knows about Afro-Latine studies. I hope he will really, really support this adventure. And then for that to be really, to come to fruit, to come to be true, to make Howard University the hub of the first podcast ever air in Spanish, talking about Afro-Latine and Latine, Afro-Hispanic and Hispanic, Afro-Spanish and Spanish issues ever.
Definitely. All right, that was a beautiful testimony. All right, on to the next question. Well, you kind of spoke a little bit about your hopes and, aspirations, where you see this podcast going in the future. But are there any more comments that you have about that?
Yes. Like I'm saying, I said that 1 second before. The hope is like we have real support from Howard community, but most importantly, a real support for the president, so that this podcast won't be only for Howard students, but will be for all the students in the United States of America and all citizens in the United States of America. So this podcast should talk about any kind of issue about Afro-Latine, Latine, Afro-Hispanic, Hispanic, Afro-Spanish, Spanish, by students. This is the most important core of that. This should be carried by students. This is the turning point though here. It's not about professional coming and do the blah, blah, blah. No, the students see problems and they need to point it and talk about it. Be fearless. Don't even think, oh, did we ask so Dr. Akasi? You don't need that. The only thing is just to let me know, like, we have this day, if you can turn it. But the idea is to talk about these issues. Talk about the issue and not only talk about entertainment. but talk also about entertainment. But I say not only about entertainment. Talk about the issue, the real issue.
Right. Speak
For
about
instance,
what's important.
what is important? Why? For instance, an example, when they have a Black Lives Matter in U.S., Black Lives Matter resonate in Latin America. Black Lives Matter resonate in Europe. But it should be at the reverse way too. If there is an issue about black in Latin America, it should have an echo in the United States of America. Through Radio Changó, through this podcast. It should not be only one way. African descent in the U.S. should not feel like they're so privileged, like they should not talk about the issue of black in other places in the world. No, they should have this solidarity I was talking about when I was a student. This Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism. Do you know one of the founder of Pan-Africanism is not someone from Africa. He's a black descendant from here. His name is Du Bois. From here, from US, a black descendant. So this thing need to come back. Like African descent here should feel the same thing, the same thing that people felt in Latin America for the most recent one, George Floyd. And they're carrying all of these signs talking about Black Lives Matter, las vidas de los negros también important. So this should be also for you when something happened there. When, for instance, the first vice president ever of Colombia today, she's a black lady. It should be one point, for instance, of a conversation in this podcast.
Definitely.
Like people need to hear from you guys. What do you think about it? What that can change your perspective from there? What lessons they're giving you? Like also it should be back and forth. Not only people feel from outside like they need to be in solidarity to black in US, but black in US also should be in solidarity with them through this podcast.
Yes, sir. So to reiterate, a few of your hopes for the podcast are that we're able to articulate the political position of Afro-Latinos in multiple countries all over the world, and that we're able to start a discourse for the entire United States regarding Afro-Latinos.
Exactly. Starting here, of course, because the problem are just right here first, right? And go there too, right? Start here. Why? Because most of the time what we see on TV, they say Latino or Latinx community. Why is it drop the Afro? Right. So you guys need to address that. Why is it drop this Afro? Is that a drop that is just because of a semantic, or is a political reason? There is a political reason. There is a social reason. There is economical reason. So you guys, because you are in the HBCU, you need to address that.
Yes.
You should not just let it like that. Why when people want to get together, they say Hispanic? Why is it dropping the Afro? So you need to address that.
Certainly.
When people say Spanish, why is it dropping Afro? They are black in Spain.
Yes.
So you guys need to start here because you have an issue around you and go outside, right? Talk about this topic. And also talk about any topic that is also basics, right? It could be, for instance, what is the relationship between African descent at Howard University? See, start by small stuff like that sometimes. Between African descent at Howard University and Latino or Afro-Latino community at Howard University.
Yes.
Right? And then escalate a little bit, talking about in the community of DC, in US, in Latin America, in Spain, in Africa. So you need to be able to do this kind of stuff.
Certainly. I think that's very important, and I definitely will make sure we get to, do that.
Yes, please.
All right. One of our last questions. Would you have benefited from an organization or a podcast like Radio Changó or just Changó in general during your time in college?
Naomi, this is a great question. So you are taking my dream to be true because I did not benefit it when I was student. I was activist when I was student, but I was on kind of organization where we were not taking into account radio. Like, not because we did not want, it's just because there were not opportunity to do that. So we were more working with the way we could. We can send flyers, we can communicate with people by phone. So the circulation of information, it was on between, because it was only on campus. So there were not an echo. With a podcast, you have an echo of what's happening, right? So in our case, we could not have this echo. So that's why this dream, like, I could not make true. I want that to come true through this podcast. Like, everything they will be talking about at Howard, including, and I forgot to mention that before in the other answers, including conferences, seminars, roundtable. Maybe you won't be able to go to all of them, right? About Afro-Latine, Afro-Hispanic, Afro-Hispanic, but think about it. You guys as a leader, you and Chantilly, like, Dr. Akasi or someone else is organizing this stuff.
Yeah.
So let's go to ask questions on one or two of people, right? So make sure the information is not only on between, like people who are preaching in the same choir. No, it should be also, you should be the voice of this kind of event, and make them true. And Howard should for me, Howard should have been for a long time doing that, but it's never late.
It's never too late.
I want you guys, member and team of Radio Changó, to pass the word. Like Radio Changó, like the own cultural society, Changó per se, should ever not disappear, no matter what. So do a lobbying to have more people with you, because you will graduate one day anyway. So make sure you pass this word, like, hey, we did not start that because it's Naomi or because Chantilly. No, it's an objective. We have an objective. So this should be beyond us, beyond Dr. Akasi. It should be something, a legacy at Howard University. So people come to this team should know that, though. It should be the first principle. You're not coming here just to put on your CV, I got, no. This is like a long-run project, like we're trying to get. We should not be like that. At one point, Radio Changó should have a big studio.
Yes.
People come in and grow and even support, students, sometimes, because if it grows, it will have ads, right? If it grows, it will have some people want to support. And this support should be to help other students, to be able to travel, to this Spanish-speaking country, to this Portuguese-speaking country, to this French-speaking country, for them to make the dream come true. So this is the objective. This is not just a simple coming in and go out writing on the CV. No, this is big. So I could not do it, right, when I was a student for some reason, but I think you guys can do it. You have a chance to live on one of the greatest countries. When I say great, I'm talking about economically, though, because the other aspect, this is debatable, right? But so take advantage of that to have these kind of tools and make this stuff come true. Put all your passion in it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you as well for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this, and just also being able to take this conversation to a larger, scale level. And so, I'm really excited for where this goes, and I think that Changó is going to really make you proud. So,
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Your time in college, how do you feel like Changó, the organization, has helped your development as a college student, or do you feel like it has contributed to who you are?
On campus at all. I would go to ASA events just because my friends were in ASA, so I would go with them. But I do feel like I had a space to call my own, and a space that I was excited about joining, especially since I was coming out of COVID, and I didn't really know a lot about the different programs and organizations on campus. So I was really trying to look for some place to call home, and being a leader of Changó has allowed me to create that home for myself. Afro-Latina the same as I did.
And how would you identify your ethnicity or your nationality?
So my mom is Puerto Rican, and my dad is African American, and they're both from New York City.
Okay, lovely. So New Yorican. All
Exactly.
right. That's really cool. And then what issues do you feel like are important that we speak about on the podcast? Just issues that you've experienced as an Afro-Latina or as a Puerto Rican individually, anything in that area.
I think something that we should really touch on through this podcast is the conversations that we have within our communities about colorism, or sometimes the lack thereof about these conversations. Because when I was growing up, I grew up in a predominantly Dominican neighborhood, so there was low-key a lot of colorism that I experienced growing up. So I think amplifying those conversations and kind of dismantling those ideas within the Latina culture is really, really important for our future and for building and developing future generations.
I think that's really important as well. On my application, I actually put that's what I want to talk about. And you'll see a little sneak peek of us talking about that in the first episode.
I'm excited.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. So your voice will be heard. Also, you're part of your story. Hopefully one day we can interview you again and get you to share an experience for a more in-depth episode about colorism, because that needs its own episode alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if you weren't in Changó, would you have started an organization like this? And do you think that other colleges would benefit from having an organization like Changó as well?
Yes and yes. I definitely was kind of on a hunt to really find my people towards spring semester of my sophomore year. So I was going to create Changó regardless. That's something that I spoke about when I first kind of applied to be vice president. It was something that I said in my platform speech, that I was going to create this environment whether Changó existed or not. So I'm glad that I was able to come into a space that already had I guess a title and kind of the framework to start this. And then O'Brien and I took it upon ourselves to really create the foundations of this space, the foundations of this organization, make sure that we actually execute on the things that we want to see for ourselves and the promises that we make for other people.
That was a beautiful answer, and thank you for that. I'm really excited to be a part of the team and an extension of Changó. I notice how passionate everyone is about this, and it's good that we are, because it's important to feel a part of your community. Being, coming from two different cultures can be difficult to find ways to immerse yourself into, communities. And so I'm really just touched by your message, and I think that the audience will be as well when they're hearing the podcast. Those are the only questions I had for you. It was really quick. And yeah, just thank you for being the president as well. I think that you definitely deserve this position. I mean, just how passionately you talk about it as well. I can tell that we have a great leader.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm very grateful. I don't think you understand.
So, what was it like growing up as an Afro-Latina? I'm really interested in learning about what you guys experienced, because there's so much discourse about it online.
Yeah.
Cuando yo era una chiquitita, I started in a very diverse elementary school in Florida. There was a large Latino community, so I was proud of my heritage growing up. Pero el colorismo es un problema global. I made it a goal para aprender cómo hablar español. I started learning and practicing, but I moved around so much and got different criticism from people, I internalized all of those things, and it was really hard to embrace that part of my identity.
Yeah, I relate with you shying away from your heritage. My mother is Puerto Rican and my dad is African American, y siempre me enseñaron a tener orgullo de mi herencia. But there was always discourse on Twitter about mixed people always trying to prove they're mixed, and because of that, I tried to conceal my identity and it was just easier to say that I'm black.
Right.
I like how we have a mesh of shared experiences, but also experiences that are unique to us because of our physical appearances.
And that's a result of the African diaspora. No somos un monolito, but we do go through similar experiences in our upbringings, especially when it comes to our identity.
Exactly. There's beauty in having the shared experience of identity while differing in lived experience. Like for me, because my familia entera es de la República Dominicana, I feel that they're more reluctant to acknowledge que somos gente negro también. So I've never known to identify as anything else other than Latina. Identifying with my blackness is something that's relatively new, so I feel like if anything, especially at Howard, I'm on a journey to acknowledge more of my blackness as a black woman in America versus my family that sees it as, oh no, yo soy 100% dominicana, pero I just live here. Tú sabes.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you mean. I feel like coming to Howard and being a part of organizations like Changó is a big learning experience to connect with our herencia. Since I've been here, I feel like I've been able to fully embrace myself as someone who is both black and Puerto Rican and not have to identify with one part more than the other.
And if no one has told y'all, I will say that I'm proud of you guys for embracing that. Es muy fácil para la gente to erase their blackness, and you guys are actively making an effort to embrace it, and that's so admirable. A lot of people just take the easy way out, and y'all are doing amazing.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Of course.
I know you're a freshman, but I hope that your experience with your complex identity becomes a lot better. Howard is very inclusive, and within our education, we're taught what the diaspora truly is supposed to be. And I haven't come across anybody who judges anyone else for the way they identify, especially in Changó. And since you found us your freshman year, I feel like you're going to have a really great experience.
And thank you all for sharing your experience. I think Changó is a really great organization for all of us to immerse in our culture and stay in touch with our roots.
Right. Radio Changó is a reflection of not only Howard, but Afro-Latinas globally who want to share their stories and be heard, and for more conversations to happen.
Well, gracias a todos for listening to our first episode of
Yay.
Radio Changó.
Yes.
We all enjoyed speaking with you guys, and please be sure to tune in every other Wednesday for new episodes.
We can't wait to talk to you about Afro-Latinas and our hair in our next episode. I'm sure we could talk about personal experiences with our hair for hours.
Exactly. In this upcoming episode, we get to hear from Howard students, possibly any of you fellow Bisons listening, so look out for that.
Ooh.
Don't tell them too much. No chisme. We gotta save it for the next podcast. So until next time,
Adios.
Dale,